It is a given that trains traveling over Montana Rail Link's 900-plus miles of track are going to battle heavy grades. The names have become synonymous with the MRL. Bozeman Pass, Evero Hill, Winston Hill, and the infamous climb over the Continental Divide known as Mullan Pass. If there ever was a centerpiece to the MRL, this is it. The grade is a demanding 2.2% from Birdseye to the east portal of the Mullan Tunnel, but the climb does not stop until reaching Blossburg. Helper sets consisting of EMD SD70ACes, the only power MRL ever purchased new, are based in Helena on the east end of the grade. Their job is to get heavy westbound BNSF trains over the Continental Divide. Everything from coal, grain, crude oil, intermodal and mixed merchandise trains, plus MRL's system-wide manifest trains working between Laurel and Missoula. Mullan Pass helpers work in sets of usually 4 or 5 diesels, producing up to 21,500 horsepower when needed. Sometimes helpers are called on to assist eastbounds, making for great railroad action on both sides of the pass. With news of the MRL reaching an agreement with BNSF to end its lease, we made several trips in 2022 and early 2023 to document the Montana Rail Link in its final years of operation. With up to 3 helper sets working the hill, Mullan Pass has proven to be one of the greatest showcases of MRL power. This is mountain railroading at its finest. Join us now as we bid a fond farewell to the MRL. Today's look at the Montana Rail Link only covers about 47 miles of the 3rd subdivision from Garrison to Helena Junction. That is because in between those 2 points lies the almost invisible boundary known as the Continental Divide, found right here at the east switch of Blossburg near the Mullan Tunnel. This is the site of a battle that has been fought since 1883, the Battle of the Iron Horse against gravity. Since its founding in 1987, the Washington Company's Montana Rail Link has joined in the fight, mostly with an army of 2-stroke EMD diesels. The sight and sound of that battle is what brings us here. We begin at Garrison, which is the junction with BNSF's Copper City subdivision to Butte, and turn east along the Little Blackfoot River past the siding of Bradley, which extends eastward toward Avon. Then Elliston, where helpers are usually cut off of westbound trains. From there, the line follows the course of Dog Creek toward the Continental Divide at Blossburg. Just past the divide, trains plunge into the 3,450-foot Mullan Tunnel. The east side is a 20-mile climb out of Helena with a ruling grade of 2.2%. Trains cross the Mullan Pass Road and Austin Creek over Skyline Trestle and pass the former siding of the same name. Then drop down around Greenhorn Trestle to the recently expanded siding of Austin, which breaks a tape measure at 21,880 feet, according to an MRL timetable from 2021. The siding cuts through Iron Ridge and loops down through the small community of Austin before going back to single track. We will continue to Tobin and end near Helena Junction, where helpers are cut into westbound trains. We have a lot to show you, so let's get started. A BNSF local out of Butte, Montana switches cars at Garrison with a trio of EMD SD70ACe. Located on MRL's third subdivision at milepost 50.9, Garrison is a small yard in junction with BNSF's Copper City subdivision running 51 miles to Butte and making a connection with the Union Pacific branch line out of Pocatello, Idaho at Silver Bow. Cars off the UP and BNSF are both interchanged with the MRL here. East of Butte, the railroad crests the Continental Divide via Homestake Pass before dropping into the Jefferson River Canyon toward a connection with the MRL main line at Logan. In 1983, Burlington Northern stopped using the Butte line, preferring the current route through Helena via Mullan Pass. Today, Homestake Pass remains mothballed, and many wonder if BNSF has any plans to reopen the line after its takeover of Montana Rail Link is complete. Although it isn't likely, only time will tell. While the Butte line turns south along Interstate 90, the third subdivision takes a nearly due east heading following the Little Blackfoot River toward the Continental Divide. BNSF 7671 leads a westbound Powder River Basin coal train toward Garrison. A surprise is waiting for us mid-train. A helper set from Helena consisting of 4 EMD SD70ACes. Helpers are added to heavy westbounds climbing Mullan Pass and are usually cut off at Elliston or Blossburg, just west of Mullan Tunnel. This helper crew was instructed to stay on the train to Garrison, where they will assist a heavy Missoula to Laurel manifest back east over the pass. To make the crew's day a little more interesting, a high-priority Super Z is catching up to this coal drag and will have to run around it at some point soon. Summertime thunderstorms spend their energy over the Continental Divide, keeping the hillsides green a little longer. Before long, the Super Z comes into view behind BNSF 3730. This train is a reroute due to a derailment in North Dakota. To get through MRL's mountain territory, the extra long Z is running with distributed power in a 3x2 configuration. As the Z continues west through Garrison, the thunderstorm subsides, moving off to the north. With their work complete at Garrison, the Missoula to Laurel manifest, now consisting of 131 cars, continues its eastbound journey towards the Continental Divide, with MRL 4305 leading the charge and the helper set shoving on the rear. An SD40-2 XR number 264 was added at Missoula to aid in the climb. The second unit on the point is MRL 4404. It is wearing a special vinyl wrap with colors honoring all essential workers who have continued to provide services to Montana communities during the pandemic. The engine was unveiled in 2021. MRL decorated another unit in honor of our nation's military veterans, and we'll get to see it in action later on. The helper set comes into view with only the rear two units under load. The lead helper, MRL 4315, is offline due to high oil pressure and injector issues which developed while assisting the westbound coal drag over the pass. In this case, with the extra power on the point, two helpers are all that's needed on the 1.4% climb to Mullan Pass. Returning to where we saw the coal train, the westbound counterpart to the ML, known as the LM, or Laurel to Missoula, heads downgrade behind MRL 4405 and 4406. In this winter scene from January of 2023, no helpers are needed as the MRL 4316 leads the ML along the Little Blackfoot River toward Mullan Pass. Returning to July of 2022, the LM train heads west with 101 cars between Avon and Bradley. The railroad crosses the Little Blackfoot River at milepost 38.3, measured west from Helena. With hard-working two-stroke EMDs on both ends of a 130-car train, our ML climbs toward the Continental Divide on a warm summer afternoon. Elliston is milepost 28.9 on the 3rd subdivision. It is here that most westbound trains have their helpers cut off before continuing to Missoula. This 4-unit helper set, including MRL 4312, 4311, 4300 and 4318 will return light back to Helena for the next shove. A work train is tied down in a house track near the east end of the siding at Elliston. Among the string of gondolas is a locomotive crane of Northern Pacific heritage built in 1969. Further ahead is a jimbo. What's a jimbo? Well, we'll see it in action in our third program near Totson. BNSF 7716 leads eastbound grain empties past the work train. Returning to Elliston on a cold and blustery January afternoon, helpers 4308, 4319, 4310, and 4312 head east for Blossburg. The former Northern Pacific station of Blossburg is the last siding before eastbound trains enter the Mullan Tunnel. This equipment sits on an old Y track once used for turning helper locomotives at the top of the grade back in the days of steam. It is also the remnant of a long-abandoned spur track that once led off to the north to a nearby quarry. Our heavy Missoula to Laurel train has seen one last time as it crests the top of the pass in the last minutes of sunlight. With the apex of the grade in sight, the helpers throttle down as they pass. When Northern Pacific surveyed routes over the Continental Divide in 1871 and 72, no less than 15 passes were considered as likely candidates for a railroad. It was whittled down to 3, including Pipestone, Deer Lodge, and this one named for Lieutenant John Mullan, who first crossed here in 1854 with a 4-mule team and a wagon. It was the shortest distance and the lower elevation that clinched Mullan Pass as the primary route. The catch was that it needed a long tunnel. Construction on Northern Pacific's Rocky Mountain Division began right here on the Mullan Tunnel on December 14, 1881. It was completed in 1883 with a length of 3,850 feet. In 2009, 400 feet of the westbore was daylighted to reduce smoke and make it easier on diesels climbing the heavy 2.2% grade to the summit. In this scene from July of 2022, MRL 4005 reaches the top with little apparent effort. A 4-unit helper set is tacked onto the rear of the LM. They ease out of the west bore with only the rear unit, MRL 4313, doing all the work. On these helper sets, the last units out of the tunnel are always the sootiest. The actual rail summit of Mullan Pass can be seen plainly as the helpers pass the signals at East Blossburg. Weather at the Continental Divide can change rapidly when pop-up thunderstorms form on summer afternoons. What had been a pleasant day turns wet, windy, and cold as an eastbound BNSF coal empty reaches the summit and plunges into Mullan Tunnel. After cutting off the Laurel to Missoula train at Elliston, the helper set follows the empty coal train back to Helena. We return to Mullan Pass in mid-January and find a stiff breeze blowing off the divide. The cattle who summer here are moved to winter ground at lower elevations. The only movement in these parts comes from the cold caress of the wind's icy fingers. On a day that we best describe as frigid, another helper set makes a beeline for Helena, following the crooked course of Dog Creek to the Continental Divide. Arriving at Blossburg, the helpers wait for BNSF 8191 West with a heavy grain train in tow. Another helper set works mid-train, consisting of MRL 4318, 4315, 4300, and 4304. With the entire train over the apex, the rear DP, BNSF 6848, is in heavy dynamics as the 114-car train eases down grade to Elliston. When the Mullan Tunnel was completed in 1883, a 1,200-foot-long wooden snowshed was extended from the west bore for added protection during the harsh winter months. The snowshed was short-lived, however. In 1888, it caught fire and was destroyed and never replaced. A common fate for wooden snowsheds during the steam era. With the crest of the grade in sight, MRL 4316 drags the Missoula to Laurel train over Blossburg. The eastern approach to Mullan Pass was graded at the Northern Pacific's specified maximum climb of no more than 116 feet per mile, based on a standard for heavy mountain grades set by America's first railroad, the Baltimore and Ohio. BNSF 4986 drags a westbound manifest upgrade and over Skyline Trestle, with helpers cut in mid-train. While the Mullan Tunnel was being completed, a temporary line was laid over the top of Mullan Pass between here at the east end of Skyline Trestle and Blossburg. The old grade can still be seen splitting away. It was called the overhead line, and it featured a series of switchbacks, trestles, and tight curves with a treacherous grade of 4.4%. As the head end approaches Mullan Tunnel, let's key in on the helpers. With the westbound over the divide, let's explore the east end of Mullan Tunnel. The natural flow of air from west to east clears the tunnel of smoke in between trains. At one time, big blower fans were attached to either side of the bore to force smoke out the west portal. They were removed by MRL in 2009 during a project to extend tunnel clearances. One of two powerhouses used to operate the fans remains. The air feels incredibly cool standing next to the tunnel bore on a warm summer day. The hint of exhaust makes us wonder at the vast number of trains that have passed through here in the last 140 years. The signals governing the control point at East Blossburg are hot, meaning an eastbound train is approaching. In this case, BNSF 7182, part manifest, part intermodal. The helpers from the previous train are attached to the rear for additional dynamic braking if needed on the 2.2% descent to Birdseye. As the train enters a tunnel, it acts like a plunger in a syringe, forcing air out the east portal. Sometimes helpers are added to the point of eastbounds, like this heavy 133 car manifest. The head end of the train continues through the former Northern Pacific siding of Skyline. It is now a spur track used for spotting maintenance of way equipment. In this scene from February of 2022, a westbound grain train crosses Skyline Trestle. Five months later, BNSF 7643 leads a westbound Roberts Bank coal train over the trestle. MRL helpers turning out a combined 17,200 horsepower keep these black diamonds moving west. Another unit grain train heads through Skyline. The heavy grade continues over Iron Ridge with a couple of large horseshoe curves at Austin. This LM is westbound with a work train added to the consist. The lead unit is a single manned helper which will cut off the train at Blossburg. The upper horseshoe once tunneled under Iron Ridge, as evidenced by the abandoned tunnel to the left of the current alignment. It was bypassed by this giant cut in the 1960s. We again pick up the helper set led by MRL 4313 as it leads our 133-car manifest train down through Iron Ridge and the giant curves of Austin. The wide open view from the air really helps us appreciate the length of these trains. To try and help railroaders appreciate the increased train lengths, the west switch of Austin siding has been extended through Iron Ridge to Weed, around milepost 15.9. just a few miles from Skyline. The current timetable shows the siding to be 21,000 to 890 feet in length. A westbound manifest is showered by crepuscular rays as it rolls under Montana's big sky. Although our subject is MRL, we still appreciate the variety of road power found on several BNSF trains, like this eastbound with Heritage 1 Burlington Northern Santa Fe colors, and a couple of Canadian engines which normally pull for opposite teams. This evening, the extra length of Austin siding is coming into play. Two eastbounds are being held for the BNSF 7176 West as it rounds the lower loop. Helpers on this train are the MRL 4405, 4406, 4303, and 4305. The first eastbound, led by BNSF 1098, is seen continuing down grade, while this grain train awaits for a favorable signal. As the swing helpers approach the midway point between the lower and upper loops at Austin, the grain train is cut loose for Helena. We switch to a ground view as the rear of the grain train clears the grade crossing for Austin Road. Looking up the hill, another eastbound approaches. This time, two more helper sets are linked together for their return trip to Helena and had ducked into Austin behind the other two eastbound trains. Helpers assist a westbound crude oil train as it climbs through Austin in February of 2022. The temperature is fairly mild this morning at around 2 below zero Fahrenheit. The following day, BNSF 8192 West is bathed in cool winter sunlight as it climbs a 2.2% grade with manned helpers attached to the rear. Three Boeing 737 fuselages are carefully placed near the head end of this train. They are en route from Wichita, Kansas to Renton, Washington for final assembly. A 5-unit helper set has been tacked onto the rear of this train, although only 1 unit is needed. The MRL 4313 gets to do a solo, while the other 4 diesels are just along for the ride. Set up at the east switch of Austin, a tie gang can be seen high up along Iron Ridge as a 4-unit helper set glides down grade. The Army of Maintenance of Way machines trigger a defect detector near West Austin repeatedly.
MRL detector, milepost 15.9. No defects. Repeat, no defects. Total axle 4. Temperature 63 degrees out.
Leaving Austin, MRL's 3rd subdivision follows the eastward course of 7 Mile Creek through a narrow gulch that widens into a small valley at Birdseye. Just below Austin, near Rattlesnake Creek, the grade is still 116 feet to the mile, or 2.2%. A heavy BNSF coal train has dug in for the climb to Mullan Pass, running 3x4x1. We caught this same train a few days earlier at Blossburg, heading east. Now with 130 buckets of Powder River Basin coal, it makes its return trip west to the Canadian export terminal of Roberts Bank, near Vancouver, BC. On a frigid winter morning just above Birdseye, a westbound loaded grain train labors up the cold steel rails that guide it through the Rockies. This helper set includes 4 units, MRL 4300, 4313, 4301, and 4307, all part of the first batch of 16 new SD70ACes delivered to MRL in 2005. The high horsepower, fuel-efficient diesels were nicknamed Sippers, in contrast to the thirsty SD45s they replaced. Another westbound BNSF coal train slowly passes Helena Junction at milepost 3 at the bottom of the hill. This is where westbounds cut their helpers in. The engines will pull toward the crossing of head lane and stop for the helper crew to make the cut. Looking west, 2 more helper sets glide back down to Helena. By the time the cut is made, the sun has dropped below the horizon. BNSF 7626 pulls the first section of the train west so the helper set, which has been waiting patiently, can slide in. A long view from the Bird's Eye Road crossing shows the coal train starting into the grade. Smoke from the 5-unit helper set tells us they are notching up for the climb. Not as obvious in this scene is Montana's capital city, which is laid out in the tree-covered hillside behind the train. Between Bird's Eye Road and Helena Junction is the control point of Tobin, milepost 5.1 on the 3rd sub. Just before sunrise, MRL 4304 and 4310 lead an eastbound ML train into Helena for a crew change and a little switching before continuing its eastbound journey to Laurel. The train stops before reaching Helena Junction to have its rear helpers removed. The helpers will be needed on a westbound train shortly, so they will be heading directly to the junction on the near track. Later that morning, we find MRL 4405 and 4406 waiting at Tobin with a work train. It's down for BNSF 3837 East, which has an empty ethanol train in tow. The Missoula East dispatcher bends iron, and the MRL 4405 West gets a clear for Mullan Pass. Nearly every train heading west of Helena takes on helpers, especially the unit trains of grain, crude oil, and coal. For this reason, the lion's share of MRL's fleet of SD70ACes have been assigned to Mullan Pass, working in groups of 4 or 5 as they do battle against the stiff 2.2% mountain grade to the Continental Divide at Blossburg. As the MRL fades into BNSF, the battle will go on. But we will never forget these scenes. The army of MRL's blue and black EMDs wide open in Run 8. The pulsating rhythm of the two-stroke 16-cylinder diesel engines producing a combined 21,500 horsepower, making sure trains like this one keep rolling over Mullan Pass. As always, until next time, thanks for watching.